So, what's the best way to learn Latin? Well, there's actually not one particular way. There's a lot of different ways that you can learn Latin, but here's what they all have in common. One is you have to have the desire, the motivation. And when you ask the question, how can I learn it, then I know that you certainly have the motivation and the interest. That's what's most important. And then second, you have to have the ability to come together with others in some way to learn it. So you can't even learn it on your own in the sense that you can't teach yourself Latin. You have to be taught by someone. Now, that someone could be in the form of a book, or it could be someone in the form of a video, but you have to have someone else teach you. So someone else has to welcome you into the Latin community, just like they were welcomed into the Latin community. Other than that, having the interest and the motivation, as well as the ability to come together with others, there's different ways that that can be accomplished. So one major way to think of it is, do you want to learn how to speak Latin, or do you want to learn how to read Latin? Now, some of you might think, well, I want to do both. I want to speak Latin and I also want to read Latin. And I say to you, fantastic. I really like you. For those who say, well, I just want to learn how to read it because maybe it would be very helpful, and it will be very helpful as you study classical figures or classical history, or as you study theology. Or maybe you think, I actually think that it would be really desirable to learn how to speak Latin. Fortunately for you, you can do both of those. So I would say choose primarily if you want to be someone who's learning how to speak or learning how to read and maybe even write, because your teacher and your instruction is going to be different. Let's say that you're interested in speaking Latin. Well, here are a few different resources that you can look into. One is podcast. There are some wonderful podcasts that I listen to that are completely in Latin because, yes, Latin is a spoken language and there are people who speak Latin fluently. They speak it just as fluently as I'm speaking English right now. And you can listen to them and you can get podcasts for free and you can hear people speaking in Latin, talking about current events and other things. There are also opportunities that you can go to study Latin, and sometimes they have these week-long camps, or there's different places where you can go and study, and some of these might be in Rome, for instance, or any place in the world. There's certainly some in the United States as well, and you could go practice with other people who want to get better in speaking Latin, or you can find an instructor who teaches through speech. And that is probably the best ways if you're interested in speaking Latin. Now, if you want to focus on being able to read Latin, you have opportunities as well. And here you can find a video, and I highly encourage the video that we have put forth, or you can read a grammar. And again, I highly encourage the book that we have put forth on teaching you how to read Latin. And that will enable you to read Latin and also to be able to write Latin, but it's not going to equip you to be able to speak Latin in the same way. And when you're learning those, it's important to keep in mind what your goals are. So if your goal is to be speaking Latin, then you need to find other people who want to speak Latin. And I promise you that there are people out there who want to do so. You can go to YouTube and you can find other places where you can find people who want to do that. And if you really want to learn Latin, you've got to surround yourself with other people who want to do the same thing. And whether that's in the speaking direction, so you're learning how to practice. And of course, if you really want to get better at something, you have to practice. So you need to do it as much as you can. It's not something you have to do every day. But as for me, I like to get in a Latin text or have opportunities sometimes to speak Latin as much as I can. And the more you do so, the more that you are going to be equipped to be able to speak Latin or to read Latin. And that is the best way, I would say, on how you go about learning Latin.